This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform where entrepreneurs can easily create and customize their own personal or professional website. More on Squarespace later in the video.
So hello and welcome to yet another episode of Biographics. I'm your interim host, Karl, and today we're talking about Mo Berg, the catcher who may have been a spy. And every video on this channel is based on a script, and this one is no different. And that script was written by one Larry Holsworth, that you can follow at the links you can find below if you are so inclined. And I've also had a message passed down from the guys upstairs who pay my wages. That being that I have to say the words like, comment, and subscribe before getting to the meat of the video, because analytics show that me saying that makes all three of those things more likely to happen. So the story of Mo Berg is the very definition of an enigma. He was a professional baseball player of somewhat dubious abilities, yet he managed to remain in the major leagues for 15 seasons. He was fluent in several languages, including Japanese, Cantonese, Hebrew, the ancient Indo-European language of Sanskrit. He held degrees from Princeton University, Columbia University, and the Sorbonne in Paris. He practiced law while remaining in Major League Baseball as his off-season job. He never married, leading to wild speculation regarding his sexuality both during and after his life, yet he held a reputation, according to some researchers, as being a serial womanizer with a taste for young girls, including at one time the daughter of a fellow baseball player called Babe Ruth. Yes, that Babe Ruth. His erudite nature led him to mingle with leading socialites in Boston, New York, and Washington, D.C., all towns in which his celebrity as a ball player helped open doors. Yet, as a student at Princeton, he had remained somewhat of a loner, ostracized due to his Jewish heritage. He traveled extensively in the years before World War II to Berlin, to Moscow, to Paris, to Tokyo, to what was then known in the West as Peking, now Beijing in China. One would expect then, in 1930s America, such activities and background would have attracted the attention of J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. Because things back then, they just sucked, alright? And all of these things would have been red flags for Hoover in his quest to protect America from communism. Yet, a search of the FBI's vaults of files available under the Freedom of Information Act reveals no mention of Mo Berg. It's as if, as far as the Bureau was concerned, he never existed. Or perhaps they are simply classified because the Central Intelligence Agency acknowledges Berg and his contributions. An enigma indeed. Here is part of his story. Morris Berg was born in 1902 in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City. His father, Bernard Berg, was an immigrant from Ukraine, then part of the Tsarist Russian Empire. His mother was a homemaker. Both of Mo's parents were Jewish, which for a time during his childhood proved inconvenient. By the time he was 10 years of age, his parents had moved twice, first to West Newark in New Jersey and later to the neighborhood of Roseville in Newark. In moving, Mo's father sought out communities where there were fewer Jews, preferring to live among Italian-American immigrants. Mo was thus raised in an environment which offered no real religious training at all. As a non-practicing Jew, he did not encounter the anti-Semitism which was a factor in American life at the time. He didn't encounter these things until much later in his educational career. Now that career began kind of early because according to Mo's claims later in life, he begged his mother to enroll him in school before the day of his 4th birthday. In regards to his later baseball career, he first played organized baseball for a team fielded in Roseville by a Methodist Episcopal church. He was just 7 years of age and played under the pseudonym Runt Wolf, which is awesome. At Barrister High School in Newark, one of the oldest public high schools in the United States, a little bonus fact for you all there, Mo played under his given name. He played well enough to be named to an all-city team during his senior year and usually played at third base. It was at Barringer that Mo first encountered difficulties such as being ostracized by fellow students due to being Jewish. There were very few Jewish students in the mostly Italian-American community, which was the situation his father had wanted when he'd moved the family to Roseville all those years prior. Mo graduated from Barringer High School in 1918, just 16 years of age. He then studied for 2 semesters at New York University, where he also played a little more baseball, before he was persuaded to enroll at Princeton University. For the rest of his life, Mo Berg disregarded the academic year he'd attended in New York, referring to himself, first and foremost, as a Princeton man. He graduated from that institution magna cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts in Modern Languages in 1923. He was fluent in German, Greek, Italian, Spanish, French, and had extensively studied Latin and Sanskrit. He'd also excelled in baseball at Princeton, bringing him to the attention of the Brooklyn Major League Baseball Club, then known as the Brooklyn Robins of the National League. This feels distinctly different from recording a video. This feels like a sponsor spot, but my co-host isn't here. Oh, there you are, Snoop. Let's talk about Squarespace. Brad, Nisha, tell me more about Squarespace as I stroke my snoot.
So Squarespace is an all-in-one website platform you can use to create beautiful websites.
So it's a website that makes websites. I love
Yes.
that. I love the internet sometimes.
Well, Squarespace is a very easy to use and affordable solution if you want to make a website. And it ranges from beginners to professionals, and you can do anything from sell time to promote yourself to advertise in various things.
And folks out there might be thinking, well, why do I need a website? Do you have a social media page? That's a website. Do you not like having your social media page tied to a petty tyrant billionaire? Why not be your own petty tyrant non-billionaire and make a website that speaks to you as a person? Are you an artist? Do you sell stuff? Do you just have an Instagram page where you take nice photos? Hell yeah.
The options for making a website on Squarespace do appear to be practically limitless.
Yes.
And one thing you can do is you can add an extension to your site, which basically allows you to extend the functionality. So any feature that you want, you can find an extension that will allow you to do this.
So you got any examples of this? What were the features that I could add to a website?
Well, I imagine you could add an extension to track certain things, like if you want to say how many people have read or looked at something.
Yes.
Or if you maybe wanted to monitor the number of a particular thing sold, or how many people are attending a certain class.
So as well as extensions, Squarespace also has its own analytics page, so you can keep track of who's visiting your site and where they're coming from.
And here's the thing as well, and I'm just going to give people out there a pro tip. If you do make your own website using Squarespace and the links below, just take a break from looking at analytics. Guys, we've been in this content creation biz for a long time now. It's very, very easy to fall down that rabbit hole of watching the number go up. So yeah, while it is a very useful tool, it's one that should be used sparingly.
Another great aspect of Squarespace is also you can keep in contact with people who follow you or subscribe to you with email campaigns.
And that's a very valuable tool for anyone out there who creates things, because you worked hard to cultivate your audience. You should be able to contact them if they choose to be contacted. And as people who work online, it gets ever more difficult to get people to click on the things that you make, even after they specifically say, hey, I want to hear more about this thing. And an email campaign just removes all the nonsense of a middleman telling you that, oh no, our algorithm doesn't want to put this video into someone's suggestion feed. So thank you to today's sponsor, Squarespace. Check out Squarespace at squarespace.com/biographics for 10% off on your first purchase of a website/domain using the code Biographics. And a fun thing we've been doing in these sponsor spots is ending with a bonus fact you won't find anywhere else in the video. So would you like to hear a bonus fact, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, did you know there was a study that proved nobody likes clowns? So the story here is that a couple of years ago, researchers at the University of Sheffield went to the local Sheffield Children's Hospital and conducted a study on the kind of atmosphere that would make children feel more at ease, because feeling at ease in a hospital has been linked to, recovery times. If you feel relaxed and not terrified, you're going to heal better. They conducted a survey with 250 children in the hospital to find out what kind of decor in the hospital would make them feel most at ease. And literally every single child, when asked, do you like clowns, responded no.
Yeah. They are pretty terrifying, to be fair.
Yeah, and this study actually earned the ire of the Association of American Clowns, who released a press release to say that they disagreed with the results of the study, saying that many children found them comforting. In 1923, there were just 16 Major League Baseball teams, and they were concentrated in the North and Central United States. St. Louis, Missouri held the westernmost teams, the Cardinals in the National League and the Browns in the American. Chicago, Boston, and Philadelphia likewise each fielded 2 teams, and New York had 3. The Brooklyn Robins, they would not become the Dodgers until 1932, were a perennial doormat in the National League. Nonetheless, they had a loyal fan base, which team owner Charles Ebbets wanted to expand by drawing interest from New York region's large Jewish community. The recently graduated Princeton Tiger signed with the Robins in June 1923 for a salary equivalent to $86,000 today. His first professional game took place later that month, with Mo appearing at third base, the position he usually occupied at Princeton. During the 1923 season, he exhibited a strong arm and good fielding instincts, along with a distinct failure to actually hit the ball. At the end of his first professional season, he declined to work on his baseball skills, or lack thereof, and instead sailed to Europe and had a residency in Paris. He enrolled at the Sorbonne, taking over 30 classes, and in January 1924, he decided just to travel through Italy. Returning to America in 1924, Berg's lack of hitting led to his demotion to the minor leagues. He remained mired in the minors until April 1925, when his contract was purchased by the Chicago White Sox. The White Sox envisioned Berg training as a catcher for the 1926 season. Mo, on the other hand, had decidedly different ideas. He informed the White Sox that he would arrive late to spring training in 1926, but he enrolled at the Columbia Law School in New York. He did not join the team until late May, played in only 41 games for the rest of the season, and returned to Columbia in the off-season. The following season, the same situation presented itself, with Berg insisting on remaining at Columbia until the end of his term. In 1928, Mo finally reported to the White Sox on time and in better physical condition he'd been in the last few years, following a stint at a lumber camp in the Adirondack? I'm going to say in the mountains. Statistically, he had a much better season this time. Eventually, Mo played for 5 major league teams and several minor league teams as well, before a knee injury hampered both his speed and his ability to complete long stints squatting, as a catcher is required to do. He also completed his law degree, receiving it from Columbia in 1930, and by then he'd already passed the New York bar exam, allowing him to practice law in the off-season. He joined the New York firm of Satterley and Canfield, a Wall Street firm. To say Mo Berg's baseball career was lackluster is a little unfair. It was widely known that his hitting skills were not up to his other abilities. He was also considered to be somewhat strange, with Casey Stengel once saying of him, and I quote, "He's the strangest man to ever play baseball." Late in his career, the Washington Senators invited Berg to spring training. Senators outfield Dave Harris was told of his future teammates' ability to speak 7 languages, reportedly quipping, "Yeah, I know, and he can't hit in any of them." In the autumn of 1932-1933, Berg joined fellow ballplayers Lefty O'Doul and Ted Lyons on a university tour of Japan, where they were to deliver lectures on baseball. O'Doul and Lyons completed the tour and returned to the United States, while Berg remained in Japan before embarking on a tour which included travelling to Manchuria, across India through Egypt, and eventually he found himself in Berlin, just as the Nazi Party was ascending to control of the German government. In 1934, several major league players travelled to Japan to play exhibition games against Japanese teams. Babe Ruth, Jimmy Foxx, Lou Gehrig, and other future Hall of Famers made the trip. Though Berg was not a player of that calibre, he was nonetheless invited to participate. He enthusiastically accepted and contacted Movietone News in New York regarding the trip. Movietone was one of several companies which presented newsreels and travel documentaries shown in theatres before a feature film was screened. Berg mentioned his previous observations in Japan and suggested that Movietone provided him with a 16mm movie camera, as well as credentials as a producer for the company. And while in Tokyo, Berg claimed to be visiting the American ambassador's daughter, whom he did not know, in the hospital, which also happened to be one of the tallest buildings in Tokyo. Instead, he went to the roof of the building unescorted and filmed the Tokyo skyline and docks visible from there. During the trip, Berg was notified that the Cleveland Indians had released him. Rather than continuing the barnstorming tour, he embarked on another extended trip, including visiting the Philippines and the Korean Peninsula, before travelling across the Soviet Union and visiting Moscow. For anyone curious about why we mentioned the film that Berg shot, it's actually been credited by some, erroneously, with helping the planners of the Doolittle raid on Tokyo in April 1942. Berg did not turn the film over to the US government until the summer of that year, months after the raid occurred. It was during this barnstorming trip that Berg's reputation as a womanizer caused concerns with Babe Ruth. Ruth's daughter accompanied her father on the trip to Japan, and they sailed in the same ship as Berg. The daughter, Julia, was just 18. She became a fixture on the ship's dance floor every single night, with Berg as her usual partner. According to Julia, Berg, and I quote, "came on to me," which rather surprised me, I must say. Thought he was an interesting person. Ruth was aware of Berg's reputation among some ball players as being an inveterate womanizer. In December 1941, the United States was thrust into World War II after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and the German declaration of war just a few days later. Mo Berg maintained many contacts in Washington, where he was a frequent guest at embassy parties and other events during his playing days. He contacted Nelson Rockefeller and joined the office of the coordinator of the Inter-American Affairs. Berg's father died in January 1942, and during his son's baseball career, he never once attended a game in which Mo played. Not in high school, not at Princeton, and not in professional baseball. Berg, as was his custom, kept his thoughts regarding his father to himself. Mo Berg spent the summer of 1942 preparing anti-propaganda materials to counter German and Italian messaging in Central and South America. He also travelled as a goodwill ambassador, his gift for languages put to good use. He found the work boring and lobbied for a position which required more physical and direct action. In August 1943, he joined General William Donovan's Office of Strategic Services, entering the Special Operations Branch. Berg's first assignment with the OSS was monitoring from his office in Washington events as they occurred in the Balkans. In particular, he monitored activity in Yugoslavia. Part of his duties involved preparing operatives to embark on missions in the region. Later in 1943, he was assigned to a plan under which Italian physicists and scientists would be induced into fleeing to the United States. Those who were uncooperative were to be kidnapped and brought to the United States anyway, in order to prevent their services being exploited by the Germans. He was known to the OSS as Project Larson. So Berg travelled to Italy and Switzerland in early 1944, where he interviewed Italian, Swiss and German scientists and attempted to persuade them to defect to the United States. He was also tasked with ascertaining from the scientists just how much progress had been made by Werner Heisenberg and others on the development of an atomic bomb. And here's where the story gets even more strange. So according to Berg and others, he was to attend the lecture armed with a pistol and equipped with the requisite cyanide capsule should he be caught. And in this situation, if Berg decided that the Germans were close, he was to make the decision on his own to kill the scientists and then himself if things went awry. Berg attended the lecture, decided that the Germans were not close and allowed Heisenberg to live. Now, Berg's one documented accomplishment while in Europe was his persuasion of Italian aerodynamics expert Antonio Ferri to relocate to the United States. Ferri was an international leader in the development of supersonic flight and jet propulsion. Berg met with Ferri in Rome, where they worked together in translating captured documents and other materials. Berg convinced Ferri to relocate to America, where he was ensconced at Langley, Virginia, within the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. The OSS was disbanded in September 1945 under an executive order issued by President Harry Truman. The Secret Intelligence Branch, which had controlled most of the programs that employed Mo Berg, was absorbed into the Department of War. In January 1946, President Truman created the Central Intelligence Group, which eventually morphed into the Central Intelligence Agency, following the National Security Act of 1947. By then, Mo Berg had left government service. Mo Berg drifted in the years immediately following World War II. He was out of baseball, out of government, and showed little further interest in either. In 1951, he lobbied the CIA to hire him and send him to Israel, though the CIA exhibited little interest in the former ballplayer and OSS operative. The following year, concerns over the Soviet Union's development of atomic weapons and the increased evidence they had penetrated security over American atomic energy programs led them to approach Berg once again. According to some sources with little documented evidence supporting their conclusions, we should add, Berg was asked to contact some of his old sources in Europe regarding the Soviets' efforts. According to those sources, Berg received the sum of $10,000 to spy on the Soviet Union. He accepted the money, travelled to Europe and provided little in the way of actual usable information. The CIA's official online biography of Berg does not mention this effort, though it does claim that Berg, and I quote, provided the United States with incredibly helpful intelligence during World War II. In 1947, President Truman announced that he would award the Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in the United States, to Mo Berg. Berg ultimately declined the award, reasoning that if he could not discuss the activities for which he had earned the award, he did not want it in the first place. He mentioned possibly writing an autobiography, which described his life in baseball and espionage, but never really got around to it. One attempt by another writer to pen his biography was aborted when Berg withdrew his support for the project. Apparently, he had been offended when the writer mistook his subject for Mo Howard of the Three Stooges.
This coat must be... Oh!
I'm now imagining just the Three Stooges just bumbling through World War II, just like, avoiding calamity. That's fun. Berg played in the initial Hall of Fame game in 1939, and after his retirement from baseball, he garnered a handful of votes for induction into the hall itself. He is not enshrined there as an inductee, but in 2018, the hall opened an exhibit entitled Mo Berg, the Big League Spy, which admittedly is way cooler. The exhibit included declassified documents from his days in the OSS, including from Switzerland and Austria, as well as various items from his days on Major League ball fields. In the 1950s, Berg largely stayed with his brother Sam, though he did sometimes rely on the help of other friends and relatives when he travelled. As for how he funded these various adventures abroad, we don't really know how he did that, because he had no visible means of financial support, and when queried about how exactly he made a living, would usually simply respond by going, shh. Often accompanying this with a wink, which I can't do, but I'll try. I'm really bad at winking. Like, this side of my face doesn't work properly, so. Wait, no. Shh. That's what he'd do. But, less lame? For 17 years, Mo lived with his brother, absorbed in his books, in newspapers, and his own thoughts. He never married, and though many former teammates and friends reported his extensive womanizing during his playing years, he never seemed to be in any serious relationship with any one woman for any significant length of time. Later biographers speculated, with flimsy evidence we should add, that he was a closeted homosexual. One such biographer in his book, The Catcher Was a Spy, and in the film later based on the book, implied a homosexual relationship in Japan during his second trip to the country, but again, there's little evidence to support this assertion. According to Sam Berg, Mo became morose and testy as the 50s ran into the 60s, and Sam finally asked his brother to get the hell out. He had to draw up eviction papers to get Mo to leave, and when Mo did, he relocated to his sister Ethel's house in Bellevue, New Jersey, just to start the process anew, I guess. In May 1972, Mo Berg suffered a fall and had to be rushed to hospital. He died a few days later. His remains were cremated, and Ethel had his ashes sent to Israel, where they were either buried or scattered on Mount Scopus, depending upon the source. As to his service as a spy or as a potential assassin, which he claimed and was reported on in countless websites and videos, it was much like the rest of his life, based on true events that were greatly exaggerated through the retelling, usually by Berg himself. He was a mystery during his life and remains a mystery in death. There is no doubt that he worked for the OSS during World War II and in some dangerous circumstances in Italy and Switzerland, but the accuracy of the tales in which he prepared to assassinate a German scientist seem far-fetched and have little in the way of hard physical evidence. Perhaps the Catcher was a spy. What is certain, though, is that the Catcher was and still is a mystery, one of which the whole truth will likely continue to elude both historians and fans of baseball and, YouTube content creators like ourselves. Speaking of which, I hope everybody enjoyed this YouTube video about Mo Berg. If you did, leave a like, a comment below with suggestions for more topics for us to cover, feedback, all that good stuff. Subscribe for more like this. Follow the author Larry Holsworth on socials below and my own. If you wanna, you can. Don't post on there much anymore, because just everything happening right now. But I also have other channels, Facting with Karl Smallwood and Wiki Weekends, where you can find more content from myself. Otherwise, as I always like to say, I hope everybody out there has the day they deserve.